It's literally a machaya.
Right, it is. Thank you. Yes, so really, it's just so, and very grateful for that. Um, and and one of the things I've learned over the past year is just not to try to force things too much. Just when there's a reality of whatever condition, feeling, just be, push you. There's a certain amount you could push yourself, but don't stress out about it either. Just be what who you are, what you are in the moment fully. So this is what I'm feeling these days. So um, now for me personally, Pesach is meaningful. I mean, for everyone it is certainly, but in a way also creatively. That's my point. That over the years I've been involved in three different creative areas having to do with Pesach and the Seder and the Haggadah. Um, so number one is, and I have mentioned this in the past, is that I was involved in translating and putting out what's known as the New American Haggadah years ago with American writers such as Jonathan Safran Foer and Nathan Englander and Jimmy Snicket and others. So there's that part. I was also involved um, in filmmaking having to do with the Haggadah. There was a project called Projecting Freedom, and I made some short part, like a cinematic interpretation of the Haggadah. And then last but not least, over the years, I composed, or a bunch of different nigunim came to me related to the Haggadah. So uh, so Pesach it's like speaks to my creative spirit and to my soul, as it is as it should for everyone. Of course, the themes of the Seder and the Haggadah are I would say not just for all Jews, but it's even universal. I'm having a little one of those again when Facebook like does it's a little stuck. All right, try this again. So tonight, what we'll do is, I mean, there is the Parsha, which is the Parsha Mitzara, which is in a way continuation of last week's Parsha of Tazria, having to do with people inflicted with leprosy or homes that are molded, get tzarat mold and things like that. It's also the Shabbos before Pesach, which is known as Shabbos Hagadol. We call it the Grand Shabbos, and there's reasons why it's called that. So hopefully we will discuss some of that too. But at the same time, we will focus primarily on Pesach. Certainly, when we discuss the Parsha and other things, we will connect it with Pesach. All right. So okay, we're on Facebook. Welcome everyone in Facebook land for our Pesach special, warm up, prep. Get together, and it's really it's a whole new year, a whole new life, a whole new time to mamish relive this what we can say is the number one story of what fashion, what defines the Jewish people, and one of the greatest stories, universal stories of freedom, of vanquishing negativity, darkness, and finding our way home, so to speak. Even in the White House, it's already a tradition that even the presidents, I know Obama did, and I think Biden does too. Maybe Trump did also. Have Passover seders. We know how much of the story of Passover, even Moses, let my people go, and how much of that rang true to even various to the experiences of the African American community in America, who were enslaved for so many centuries, and fought for human rights. And indeed, it's an archetypal narrative that all people can relate to. So mamish, it's as much as it's a Jewish story, it's also a universal story, and it's one of the oldest. It's already, what is it, 3,336 years old. So and here that, right? So we keep on going again, but every year is unique and special. Like we say, b'chol dar v'dar, every generation, chayav adam lir tesatzme, every person is obligated to see themselves, iluhu yatsa Mitzrayim, as if he went out of Egypt. And we could say that every generation, every year, we're to find a new, fresh perspective of what does freedom mean? What does leaving Egypt mean? Right? So bless the soul that we find this new way of freedom in our lives this year that's relevant to what's going on with ourselves personally, and learn how to get out of the constraints. Mitzrayim comes from the word meitzar, narrowness. Yetziat Mitzrayim, to leave the narrowness. Sometimes we're self-imprisoned in small cells and narrow spaces. We need to let ourselves realize that there's greater open vistas ahead out there, and to find the ways to free ourselves, and also with help from others. And I'd say even more that sometimes people don't even realize that they're in narrow constraints. People who weren't given the opportunities to flex their, or to stretch their wingspans, and they never felt it. So part of it is even to realize that there is the potential to become even more free, and then secondly is to act on it, and to know that Pesach empowers us to be able to find that freedom. And that's Yetziat Mitzrayim, to go out of the Meitzar, the constraints. I'll just say almost in a way, in a phonetical type of way, you could say it's connected to the Parsha, which is Mitzora, which means leprosy, which if you remember, we said last week that it's also a conflation of the word motzi, Shemra, the Gemara says, that it's inflicted for the one who says, lets out of his or her mouth negative or bad name on someone, right? Lashon hara, as we say, right? So that's one way to say it. However, if I recall, it's the Baal Shem Tov who says there's another meaning to the word mitzara, which is motzi ra. That through our last week's parsha spoke about the condition of the leper, and this week's parsha is how to purify the leper, how to get better. So motzi ra means how to release and get rid of the bad, the evil, the negativity in us. So motzi ra is almost like motzi Mitzrayim, like the word Mitzrayim a little bit. Which Mitzrayim we could say is also motzi from the meitzah, from the constraints. So there's that similar theme of this parsha to get rid of the negativity, let go of the darkness, let behind the darkness, leave Egypt, leave behind the tameh, the 49 gates of impurity. So too the mitzvah to leave the impurity, let it out, go out of the encampment, spend time alone, to contemplate, to process and to transform. And that way we find our original pure selves. And that's the story narrative of leaving Egypt and then going into the desert, the place of purity, until we reach Mount Sinai. Yeah. So it's not easy. It's a process. Of course, we know the 49 days of Sphira that will be beginning next week. So it's and on. It's not just 49 days. It's maybe 365 days too, right? All that. But at the same time, the Pesach is the day or two, the couple days, a few days that gives us the strength to be able to work on ourselves through and through and get it done all the way through. All right. So it's about getting rid of our chametz, getting rid of all of our toxicities, and embrace our matzah. Get that state of humility. I believe Yitzchak Barditchev says that chametz means something. What does chametz mean? Chametz means like to get sour, right? Like to get things to start fermenting, getting sour. Why do things get sour? Because you leave it around. You don't take care of it. You let time take over. You're not working on it right away. So he says that we're given great potentials to what to do in our lives. And it's not only if we do right or wrong, but it's also if we don't do it quick enough. If we let things tarry, we let things start spoiling, literally. That's what chametz means. And what's it? So the idea of Pesach is, especially with the original story, Pesach is when they quickly rushed out of Mitzrayim. Sometimes you don't wait till everything is perfect. You packed up your whole valise of every little thing you need for the road. Sometimes you just gotta move. You just gotta do it now or never. Quickly, meaning not carelessly, but with a focus on the priorities, what's important, and then act upon it before things could start, getting wavering and all that. The gates are open. So don't wait around. You don't know when they're going to close. Go ahead, march forward. So that is the matzah, that we're given that state of right. Don't give it enough time to rise. So, mamish, this is the time to do it in a way that's not frenetic either. To be able to do it in a way that we're able to utilize all the everything that we're given, all the this sacred revelations and gifts we're given to implement or to do. So, as I mentioned before, of the various different nigunim that I have for Pesach, so one is also to get rid of our chametz. This to get rid of our right, and we say this in fact when we do what is known as bedikas chametz, inspecting the chametz, right? When we put out the 10 pieces the night before Pesach with the, as Jonathan mentioned, the wooden spoon, the feather, and all that. So we go around looking for it, and we collect them. And after that, we say there's the bittul chametz to nullify it, and then the next day when we actually burn it, we say a similar term, and it's in Aramaic. And it's called kol chamira v'chamiyah, the ikabishamsi. And all the leavened bread and bread and chametz, basically, that's in my property that I don't see that I am aware of, that I destroyed it, did not, may they all be nullified and be hefker, meaning free for all, like the earth like the dust of the earth. So one year because I was searching for the chametz, the 10 pieces, and just couldn't find the last one or two, and it was going on and on until for hours, basically. Finally, 2 a.m, found the last piece or two of the 10 pieces, and there was such joy and elation because it wasn't just about finding the piece. It was like it also makes you think about yourself and working on what are the imperfections, the chametz that we carry within us, and to find it, to explore it, like they say, the candle, to put up the candle into our souls, and to right, where every place that there could be chametz needs to be inspected. That means within us. So if we finally found it, so the following nigun came to me, to the words when it was time to say the kol chamira. It was like this. Kol chamira v'chamiyah de'ika b'shusi v'chazise yudula v'yate udula yedana le. Kol chamira v'chamiyah de'ika b'shusi v'chazise yudula v'yate udula yedana le. Liyivatel v'levei hefkei ki afra deyara. Liyivatel v'levei hefkei ki afra deyara. Liyivatel v'levei hefkei. Liyivatel v'levei hefkei ki afra deyara. Liyivatel v'levei hefkei. Liyivatel v'levei hefkei ki afra deyara. Ya la 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 ram, ay ram la ram la ram, ay ram la ram la ram la ram, ay la ru 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 ru, ma 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 ma, ay do yo bu bu bu. Right. So may just remember that even getting rid of our negativity is to be done with joy. And that's hopefully this niggin captured that. It's not just a heavy thing to be actually to be realize the great zechus merit we have that we could clean up our mess. They would say old Hasidim of old would be when they would say they would look forward to go to Gehenna, to hell, because Gehenna they didn't see as punishment. They saw it as a place to like the deep cleaning of their soul, to prepare it to go to heaven, to Gan Eden. So they were actually besimcha, happy. They were going to Gehenna because mamish we could become pure again, and then be our true soul selves again.
Literally a purgatory.
Purgatory, yes, exactly. So that is the prelude part of to Pesach, is first getting rid of the chametz. And once and we do that before Pesach, and then already by Erev Pesach we finish with the chametz, right? By late morning, and then we're preparing, and then we can go into Pesach mamish pure, the purest of the pure. So and to find the freedom that comes with that too, as mentioned. Also, before Pesach, what happens, and then this is related to this Shabbos, which is known as Shabbos Hagadol, the great Shabbos, is that 5 days before Passover, from the 10th of Nisan, there's the instruction that God told Moses to tell the people that everyone should go and get a lamb and tie it to their bedposts, right? And to bring the carbon Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice, Pesach night, they go out. So the story is twofold. First of all, the lamb was a deity to the Egyptians. So the fact that the Israelites were taking these lambs and tying it to the bedposts was already seen as something derogatory. And it's not being, it's not for worship. It's what are they doing? So the Egyptians asked the Yidden, "What's going on? Why you have these lambs in your bedrooms?" And they answered, "Well, I'll tell you, because in a few days, God's going to take us out of Egypt, out of this cursed land, right?" So what was the reaction? Interesting. One would think that they would get pissed off at the Jews and say, "What are you talking about? Who's making this up?" and start attacking them. But no, they knew better, because there were already 9 plagues, right? And they all happened according to the way that the God of Israel said, even though Pharaoh didn't, each time his heart hardened. But the people knew that this God of the Israelites is, when he says something, it happens. So their reaction was to go to Pharaoh to convince him. Now it wasn't just Moses, but it was the Egyptians themselves trying to convince Pharaoh to let the people go. Especially being that it was being connected with the fact that there will be the plague of the firstborn. But they wouldn't give in. And what happened was there became a civil war amongst the Egyptians, between those that were trying to wanted to convince to let the Jews out, and those that didn't. So it was almost a lot of the job of downsizing the Egyptians' antagonists was already happening on its own, right? This is why we say in the Hodus that we say from Tehillim, and we say in Haggadah, we say Lamake Mitzrayim B'Pcharei. That right, because the firstborn Egyptians were the ones that were most scared that they're going to be killed by the tenth plague. They were trying to get to convince the leaders of Egypt to let them out, to let the Jews out, and they wouldn't. So Lamake Mitzrayim B'Pcharei is that the Egyptians were fighting each other, the firstborns against each other. That in itself was together. Okay. And though it was technically on the 10th day or so, yet we do it traditionally the Shabbos Haggadah, the great Shabbos before the Shabbos, which is the Shabbos before Passover, which is also, by the way, it's known as one of the two most important Shabbos for the rabbi of a community to give a sermon. The Shabbos, right? One is Shabbos Shuvah, Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the other is this Shabbos Haggadah. So it's a time of one really to convey great inspiration to the community also. Now it's interesting. The miracle, or what we connect Shabbos Haggadah, is not because of the mitzvah itself of mishchu chulachem, that to go and to tie the lamb and prepare it for the sacrifice, which was incidentally also connected to the mitzvah of circumcision, because a lot of the Jews were not circumcised. And it was only the night of the Paschal Lamb that those that weren't circumcised those too. So that's one would think is we should commemorate this time, this Shabbos before Passover or the days before, to that the Yidden took upon themselves this great mitzvah of the Paschal Lamb and of Milah, but no. What we focus on the fact that the Egyptians were infighting and took care of stuff by themselves. Now, seemingly the mitzvah of preparing the Paschal Lamb is more of a big thing, a lesson for us, right? Because it's saying that the Jewish people knew that that would be heresy to the Egyptians to take this lamb and tie it up. Yet they did it anyways. Plus, to be circumcised. This also shows on great self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh. So one would think that should be the focus of the greatness of the Shabbos Haggadah. But no, even though it's related to it, that because of the Paschal Lamb, it led to the Egyptians killing each other, but we emphasize the latter, the infighting of the Egyptians. Why? To show that it's not just about our self-sacrifice that gives over to do the right thing, despite whatever possible threats, but it's more about what effect we have on the world. Okay, that even those that are on the low level of the Egyptians, pagans, and what have you, they themselves, a lot of them recognize the truth of the God of Israel and what's going on, so much so that they took up arms about it. That means that even Egyptians themselves were being transformed to a more positive way. So it's true, self-sacrifice and doing a mitzvah is very important. But as if not more important is the effect that it has on the world, and even in the lowest areas, the lowest or low spiritual people, so to speak. They too can be transformed and eradicate, and even become agents for the holy, for the good. All right. So this is all again also. Well, this is all the prep part to Pesach, to this Passover, this Seder, right? And then eventually, what happens the night of Passover? That is when the Paschal Lamb happens, and then they're obligated to eat it that night, not leave anything over. Incidentally, it says that night, not only was it full moon, but it was bright like day. That the night itself was illuminated, the night of Passover, which also explains why they were able to because usually circumcision can only be done by day, but that night of Passover was exception to the rule that it was like day, considered day, and that all led to the actual leaving Egypt, whether at midnight or the next the next day midday, when the sun was actually fully out, and that we were empowered to do it in a way of Pesach, which literally means to leap, right? That regardless of how sunk we were for over 200 years in Egyptian toxicity, but still we were empowered from above, as we say in the Haggadah, the Hashem himself, God's very essence and honor, and the highest state of Hashem came and allowed us to leap out. Pesach, leap. So the leap is twofold. It's both because Hashem leaped over the doorposts, right? That were marked with the Paschal Lamb blood, right? Pesach Hashem, and it's also that we embodied also that leap, to leap out of the tumah, out of the impurity. By the way, there's another connection of our parsha with Pesach, because in our parsha too, it talks about the blood, how to purify the leper. Sarah, it has to do with taking also a bundle of grass and dipping it into blood and spraying it. And so that is part of the purification process. So too, the purification of the Israelites from Egypt also have to do with this, taking the Paschal Lamb blood and putting it on the doorposts and all that. Now it's interesting, if you look, we call the holiday Pesach, right? Ask anyone, Passover. Passover means Pesach, to pass over. But let me ask you, if you open up a Bible, what's the name of Pesach in the Bible? Will you see the name? Does it say Chag HaPesach in the Bible? The answer is no, not really. There is the word Pesach. It says the day of commemorating the Pesach that God reaped. But the name of Pesach in Chumash, in Tanakh, is Chag HaMatzos, the holiday of matzahs. It's on the bread, it's on the matzahs itself. So if so why do we call it Pesach? So there is a vart again from Levi Parduchit. It's because we have this relationship with Hashem, and we each party here, we and Hashem, refers to the holiday based on what we see as the great quality, the great positive attribute related to it. Okay. So when Hashem looks at us, what does he see from us? Sees that the commitment of preparing not only the Paschal Lamb, but also getting the matzahs ready, as God said, and also what matzah represents, to be in a state of humility and preparation to leave Egypt and all that. So God calls the holiday to us as the holiday of matzahs, because that's our virtue, that we were living in a way of matzah, and that got us out of Egypt. Conversely, when we speak to Hashem, where we refer to the holiday as Pesach, to emphasize God's virtue for passing over, literally, for that jumping over, leaping over, because that's what we see as the greatness in Hashem, that he was in a state of Pesach. Right? So therefore, although it's not in Tanakh, or it's not even in the Kiddush. In the Kiddush also, right? We say Chag HaMatzah Zman Chereseinu, time of our liberation. So, but still, it is the accepted custom all over that we call it Pesach. The other reason why it's called Pesach, and this is more semi-mystical, I forget who is the first one who mentions it, but it is it's a conflation of two words, of Pesach, meaning the mouth that talks, the rambling mouth, the talkative mouth, that a lot of what Pesach is about well, talk specifically, like Haggadah. Haggadah means to tell, to recount, storytelling, and what have you. And orality generally, oral, whether it's through food or eating or and singing and all that. But the number one thing, as we know, is it's v'higada levincha. They should say. So this, right? You should tell your children. So, well, the truth is, it's as we mentioned, it's two individualistic mitzvot. Maybe I'll share with you right now. You could see how the Rambam, Maimonides, describes the mitzvah of the Haggadah itself. And you'll see that there's two components to it. All right, so it's on your screen. Chapter 7 of the laws of Chametz and Matzah, which is basically the laws of in Maimonides Mishnah Torah on for Pesach Seder. So chapter 7, first halacha number 1, he begins. Mitzvah satzei shel Torah. It's a Torah that means from Midoraisa, as we say. It's a positive mitzvah. Lesaper benisim v'niflois, to recount the miracles and wonders shenasu laviseinu v'mitzrayim b'leil chamishat benisim. Recount all the miracles that happened to our four ancestors in Egypt in the night of the 15th of Nisan. Shenemar, as it says, remember this day that you went out from Egypt. Which is similar, like it just says, remember the day of Shabbos, which also means to remember, which means to recount. So it's not just to remember in your head, but it's also to enunciate it with your mouth. And how do you know that it's this the night of the 15th? Because there's the other verse that says, you should recount, you should tell over to your son on that day to say that this is why we left Egypt. What is that day? Because when the day that the matzah and maror is before you, which is the first night of Passover. And now it says, "Va'af al pi she'ein lo ben," even if you don't have a son, even though the verse says you should tell to your son, but really the mitzvah is applicable whether there's a child or not in the room. So as we were speaking before, some here, others also may not have children at their Seder. It's irrelevant. There's the mitzvah to recount, lesaper, to tell. Lasaper means like the word sipur, story. Lesaper, you could also mean to shine. That when you say something and be descriptive about it and use words for it, it illuminates. It makes it more vivid. That is what's the best storytelling. Whether someone's saying it or from a book, a novel, or what have you, that the words themselves make it more real, make it more experiential. And transports us to the actual to be in the story, to be immersed in that period of the story. Someone mentioned here before also that concept of being absorbed into it, right? He says, and now it continues, even if there's great sages that for sure know the story of Egypt already, so you'd say, why did they have to say it again? No. Even they are obligated to recount the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And whoever elaborates, all the more you elaborate, all the better, all the more praiseworthy you are. Okay? So that's halacha number 1. Now, separate halacha number 2 is, like again, like as if I didn't see one. Mitzvah lahaidia laban. There's a mitzvah to inform, that means to give over the story of Pesach to the sons, to the children. And even if they didn't ask, let's say manishtana or anything, as we say, the 4th son is the one who doesn't even know how to ask, right? Even then, you have to give over. It says, to tell. Don't wait even for this child to ask, but especially if you know they're not going to ask, but just tell it to them. Interesting, when the adults start to say it, the obligation, it says lasaper, which means lasaper sounds almost like making it a story, more detailed, descriptive, and all that. For the children, it says lohidia. I mean, it's almost like just to give over the inform them, basic information. Psychologically, it could be because, like children, especially late at night, maybe they're too much details. This could be overwhelming. So you just want to give over the crux of the story at least, or the narrative. Be it as it may, we see that this is an additional concept of mitzvah to convey to the children. And then it goes on that it depends on the intelligence level, so to speak, of the child. That if he's small or if it's really young or not so smart, then you say to your child, Beni, my son, Kulano inu avadin. We were all slaves. Like, and in those days there were actual servants and slaves. You even point out, like that slave there and there. We were like that in Egypt. And this night, God freed us and took us out to, released us from freedom. So you see here, it's just a 2-liner. It doesn't even go into all the details of the story as it is in Chumash. Even just one sentence is informing to the children, and that is the base. Now, of course, you could add more to it, especially if he's a grown-up child and he says, or a wise child, a chacham. Then you could go into the details and tell him also all everything that happened in Egypt and the miracles that were done through Moshe, all based on the intelligence of the child. Okay? Then he goes on into other aspects that we see of it. To do things that will make the children ask questions, as we know. And then halacha 4, here's another concept, and we'll see that's related. It says, "V'tzarich lahaschil bignus u'lesayim b'shva." To begin, when you give over the story of Exodus, you start off with the negative part, with the gnus is the shameful part, meaning what we call the the tragedy part, but the non-ideal aspects, like the fact that they were slaves. That's almost derogatory, and so on. So you start with the story when the people are on a lower, inferior level, but then you finish the story with the praise, in the classical sense of telling a story with comedy, when you end off on a high note with a happy ending, with praise. All right. This, in fact, is a quote from the Mishnah and Gemara at the end of the tractate Pesach. So the Rambam continues. Maimonides says, "Ketzad, how do you do this?" Maschilu misaper shebetchila hayu aviseinu b'mei terach umilfanov kair v'taynim achar havel reit v'achar lilin. You start off the story that how our ancestors started even before Abraham, in the days of Terach, the father Abraham, and that they were heretic, they were pagans actually, and they pursued idols. They were idol worshippers. So that's the gnus, the shameful part that you start off. Well, Messiah, and you end bedasa emes, of how they reached to discover the truth, the true das religion. Shekavanu amakim loy, that God brought us close to Him, and separated us from other nations, and brought us close to the union, to the oneness, the monotheism. All right. So those are the bookends. You start with pre-Abrahamic, the idol worshippers, and end off with how we came close to God and all that, which probably means all the way like Revelation of Mount Sinai. So those are the bookends of the story. Then Maimonides adds something else. Then he goes, V'chein, so too, maschil media, you begin and inform Sha'avadim hayinu l'far b'Mitzrayim, that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and all the bad that fell upon us being in servitude in Egypt. And we end off with all the wonders and miracles that were done to us and how we were free. According to this, the bookend is narrower. It doesn't go back, it doesn't begin pre-Abrahamic, but it begins with when we're already in Egypt, slave, in the times of Moses, post-Jacob, right? And that's where it begins. And where does it end? It doesn't end all the way when we receive the Torah or the Mount Sinai, or we come to the Promised Land, but just leaving Egypt. So here, the timeline is narrower. So which is it? How are you supposed to say it? So the answer is that, in fact, the Talmud debates. It's two opinions. One opinion says you start all the way pre-Abrahamic and end off with when the Israelites discover the oneness of Hashem after they leave Egypt. The other says no, it's just Avadim Hayinu from the Egyptian. It's a debate of Rav and Shmuel. Right. The Rav says, you see that you start from pre-Abrahamic. Shmuel says just from the story of once they're slaves in Egypt. So which is it? So the answer is it's both. Depends who. Just like we said before, that there's two separate aspects to the Haggadah. And the Seder, one is for the adults to lisaper, recount in detail with color, illumination, the story, right? And that's one. And then there's a second mitzvah to tell the children, right? And so too, it has to do with the narrative. And when the narrative that's exclusively adult is more related to the ideological concept, the theological concept of what does it mean that the Jewish people being a people? What does it mean becoming an Am Yisrael? Which is not just being physically freed from Egypt, but the discovery that Hashem Echad, that God is one, and the unity thereof, which begins again from before Abraham and ends off all the way at Mount Sinai. So that is for adults, which we are more deeper into looking at what we call the subtext of the story. But for children themselves, what's the main part is the actual story of like a Prince of Egypt story, that they were enslaved and that they left, and that's it. And it's a shorter time frame. This is also hinted in Rambam Maimonides. Start from pre-Abrahamic and on. He says maschel u'misaper. He uses the word misaper, which to tell, which is the same word that he used before for adults, telling about Haggadah. But then when he says, when you start from Avadim Hayinu, he says maschel u'modia. He uses the word u'modia to inform, which was the word we used before that's related to when you're supposed to tell the children. Okay? So here we see the double element of the Haggadah and how it works. Now the fact is, when we read the Haggadah, we do both too. After Manishtana, it's interesting. We don't begin with B'tchila of the Avodah Zarah Hayavaseinu, right? We start off actually with Avadim Hayinu, which is the one from right. It's the opinion of Shmuel, which is the one that we do for children. Why? Because the children were the ones that just asked Manishtana mainly. So first we give the short version answer. Avadim Hayinu. Inform. We do that. Once we do that, then after we mention the four sons, then we go and give the longer version answer, which is the one primarily for adults. So therefore, we incorporate both in our story. It's like what we do is also, it's like Avadim Hayinu is the story, and then it's almost like a non-chronological narrative. Then after we give the story in brief, we give the backstory. Okay. Now, of course, when we speak about adults and children, we not only do we mean it literally, we mean it each of us. There's the adult in us, there's the child within us, which is why even those that don't have children at the Seder, or don't have, or there aren't any children at their Seder, also ask the Manishtana, right? Because we all have that. We're all by nature a child of someone, so we'll always carry that in us. So it's good to know that how to communicate and how to channel this verbal experiential manifestation of exit, the Yitzis Mitzrayim, for every level within us, the child within and the adult within or without, right? But as I say, first you start with the child, and then you build yourself up. So this is very important. This is an essential part. So just remember, a lot of us think that, the most important thing at the Seder is eating the matzah, the maror, what happens. It is very important, the matzah, but also remember, it is the saying, the Haggadah, the telling of the story that is as if not more important. Excuse me. That again is the Pesach. Now, based on this, we'll go a little bit more deeper into what is this interplay of the child asking and us answering. Okay, so we know from the Seder, of course, that there's four children, four sons: the Chacham, the Rasha, the wise, the one called wicked, the simple one, the one that doesn't ask. And Lubavitcher Rebbe and others say there's also a fifth son, the one that does not even doesn't even know that there's a Seder, isn't even here. And there's also discussions, why is it in this order? First, like why is the Russia immediately follow the Chacham and their great teachings there. Tell you another thing, like for example, that right, like some say it's because the Rasha is as intelligent as the Chacham. But the truth is, it's not about intelligence, Seder. It's about what is right and wrong. The Rasha should be at the end. Moreover, the four sons correspond to the 4 cups of wine. There's a few fours. And the Haggadah is said over the second cup, right? We fill the second cup after Kiddush, and we say the Haggadah on the second cup, and then we only drink it before we eat the matzah. So that means that this second cup corresponds to the Rasha, and that means that the bulk of the Haggadah is being told to the Rasha, which is also odd. Why? What's going on? So I'll give you a Hasidic insight that this is based on a word from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Says that we say that the way we say in Haggadah is kineged arba banim dibra Torah, right? Corresponding, that the Torah speaks corresponding, or meaning invoking 4 sons: echad chacham, echad rasha, echad tam, echad sheni. So each of the 4, it says echad, one is. It doesn't say chacham tasha, it says echad, echad. So why all this echad, echad? So the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said it's to teach us that regardless of what status we are, of observance or holiness, we all have the echad in us. We all have that oneness, that singularity element. We all have a soul. We are all part of that one. Hashem is one, and then that one is in all of us, even the Rasha. We all is one. And in fact, just like the Torah, if it misses one word, letter even, the whole Torah is invalid. So too, if we discount the Rasha from Am Yisrael, Israel, then the whole Am Yisrael isn't whole, isn't united as one. Actually, the word came to me a few years ago to this, like if you look at the word Am Yisrael, Ayin Mem, Yud Shin, Resh, Aleph Lamed, the only one of the 4 sons whose name is fully is fully represented in the name Am Yisrael is Rasha. The Ayin from Am, and there's a Resh and Shin in Yisrael. So if you would take out the Ayin and the Resh Shin of Am Yisrael, there would be no Am Yisrael. It tells you how it's even the Rasha is essential. Now,
Nice part.
thanks. Now, of course, it's not to downplay the iniquity of the Rasha, and that then the Rasha is still the state before becoming Baal Tshuva, if you being transformed. And in fact, there's in the Haggadah, it sounds like we're being pejorative to, or being negative to the Rasha, who says, what is all this work for you? Right, to you. And then he says, and then the Haggadah says, then you go knock out his teeth and tell me if you were there, you wouldn't have been released. That itself is a strange answer. Like, why are we even answering him? Why just tell him, get out of here? Like Russia, what are you even doing here? Like, why are you coming making that in itself, by the way, is by the way, interesting thing. Like I know certain people that are rebels. There's two types. There are those that they don't just care if it. There are two types. There are those that are, let's say, oppose a certain conventional way. So they're always antagonizing, right? So, and then there are those that just don't. They couldn't care less, right? So which is the worst? The one who's always fighting, antagonizing against a certain position, like we were talking earlier about protests on campus or something, or people just don't care. So on the one hand, you say, well, those that are fighting and rebelling and shouting, so they're worse. They're making such a ruckus. But the truth is, when they're doing that, they're showing that that it still means something to them. That it's affecting them. That's why they're fighting. You know, it's still they care about it, even though it's in a via negativa way, in not a direct positive way, but at least it bothers. Whereas someone who doesn't care, they don't even show up, right? So the fact that the Russia, even though he opposes the whole all the concepts here of the Seder and Egyptian, but the fact he showed up to the Seder, is willing to debate and challenge, that in itself shows that there's some relationship, something that there's something to work with. Okay, so there's that aspect. Right. But it's not easy. It's not for everyone because you can't get sucked in. You can't get influenced by the Russia either, which is why the Russia follows immediately the Chacham, because the Chacham is the one that knows how to communicate wise person and how to speak to the Russia on his turn in a way to persuade and to show and be able to bring out that echad, that oneness that's in the Russia, co-equal like the Chacham and everyone else, to bring it out and reveal it. So it's twofold. Both it's a lesson, both for the Russia, that even in the lowest states, you're still part of the game. You still carry an echad in you, and you're welcome to the Seder. With all, yeah. Like how many of like the stereotypical American Seders, how many of them are like atheists, atheist uncles, right? Just show up at the Seder, but they're going to debate and question, what do you talk about these miracles and this God and this? So you say, hey, Uncle Mo, if you're so against, why are you coming here? Like, what are you doing? He says, hey, what do you mean? It's Pesach, it's a Seder. Well, I'm not going to come. So it shows that there's a connection so deep beyond all of this, all these calculations, or even this Russia attitude, right? Also, the lesson is the opposite, the other way, that to teach the Chacham that the Chacham could have a positive influence on the Russia, and to sit the Russia next to him at the Seder, not on the other side of the table, but really to accept. Now it's tricky business because people could be influenced. In fact, one of the ways of the way innovations, so to speak, or emphasis of the ways of Chassidus was this idea of the tzaddik being the one that to be able to interact with the less than perfect ones, so even Russias, and be able to work with them and even to bring them closer to Yiddishkeit. And it would come with great caveats. It's not for everyone to do. It's only for people in a high stature like a tzaddik. That knows that they're steadfast, 100% pure and clear where they are and won't be influenced. They will only be influencers, and all that. But the idea is there, and it's and I would say in a certain way we're all empowered these days to have positive influence on others, and it's not as much as getting into complicated debates. It's just to show in the other what they already have, to show the soul spirit that they possess, and to just to allow it to open up and shine through, right? So this is in fact similar to the whole idea we were saying before of going and purifying and clearing out even areas that are full of this defilement, toxicity. Like, for example, when leaving Egypt, it says only a fifth left Egypt because 4/5 of the people were spiritually stuck. And then there was what's known as the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude peoples that were down. Right? And some of them wound up with the golden calf eventually, and on and on. So it's knowing how to bring together and integrate, and also showing that even the most sinful individual, Bishachati Yisrael, who is still is part of the Am Yisrael, the people. Okay, and this is also why the answer to the Rasha is it's not just Nakaras teeth, and it's if you were there, you wouldn't have been redeemed. Really, what the answer to the Rasha is saying, why are you doing all this ritualistic things? It's not relevant. It doesn't have real effect and all that. But really, the answer to the Rasha is, look, the fact that you're here at the Seder, the fact that you didn't die off in Egypt, the fact that you did make it here, is because now we're in a new reality, meaning that there was the time before Exodus, leaving Egypt, all of Judaism was primarily about spirituality, about being holy, and about serving God on a very refined level. But it wasn't so much so about manifesting, bridging the spiritual with the physical in the world. Right? So the answer to the Rasha is, you're right, Rasha. Really, if you're not into if you're only focusing on the spiritual, then you're right. There's no reason why to make anything special out of Egypt. But the fact is, from Exodus, we made it to Mount Sinai, and it was revealed to us that the spiritual, and meaning the divine and the physical, are one. And serving Hashem is through the physical world. So in that case, you, Russia, who you focus on materialism and what have you, then this Yiddishkeit is relevant to you too. And so if you would have been there in the pre-Exodus Egypt, you would not be redeemed. But now we're not in the pre-Egypt Exodus Egypt. We're in we're in the reality of post Mount Sinai, where heaven and earth are one. So here now, certainly you're part of it, and just learn how to channel. Take your materialism and elevate it to a way of serving Hashem. That's all. With this idea, we also understand another aspect, which is related actually to the verses that we say primarily has to do with the Chacham. And what we're referring to is the verses that we said it's actually from Deuteronomy, right? Because if you look through both in Exodus, and Devarim, you'll find all the different verses have to do with the 4 sons. Now, so in the Parshat Eschanan is the one that has to do primarily with the Chacham. So what we'll do is we'll look at these verses, and we'll see how this concept also relates to the Chacham. All right. So the verses, this is from Sefaria. This is chapter 6, verse 20 in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy. It starts like this. When your son will ask you tomorrow, meaning in the future, to say, what What are all these different types of the edus testimonial mitzvahs, the decrees without logic, and the rules that Hashem told you to do? What is this all about? Note that it doesn't even necessarily say here Passover. He says just in general. If your son starts asking you, why, Tati, mommy, why are we doing all these mitzvahs? What's going on here? So then, v'amarta levincha, you should answer your son that avodim ayinu l'far b'mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. God took us out from Egypt with a strong hand. And God did great wonders and miracles, signs, and punished, did negative things to Egyptians, to Pharaoh and his whole house, before our very eyes. But and he took us out from there. He took us out in order to bring us to the promised land, to the land that he promised our forefathers. It means the land of Israel. And God commanded us to do all these laws, all the mitzvahs, to fear God, Hashem, our God, so it should be for our good, for our benefit, for all the days, to enliven us, like this day. And then tzedakah tiyalanu, and it may be therefore like a merit, a tzedakah, that we keep the commandments of Hashem. Okay. So now, let me ask you, when you read this, what is going on here? The son is asking, Tati, why are we doing all these mitzvahs? Now, instead of seemingly the answer is at the end. The reason is, so in order that you fear Hashem, the yiras Hashem, to do for our betterment. Like in like the verses before in the same chapter, he also speaks on this theme of how to fear Hashem as Hashem al-Kachatira, to fear God and serve Him, and on and on. So why is there this whole need to speak about even the whole story about Egypt and about leaving Egypt? Why is that connected to answering the child? Why are we doing mitzvahs? Seemingly, being slaves in Egypt and leaving is just the events that lead us to the land of Israel that then which enables us to live a life of fearing Hashem. But why is this part of the answer? You understand? He could have just said straight away, why are we doing these commandments? In order to the yiras Hashem Elokeinu, to fear Hashem, right? So what's going on here? And not only that, we use this in the Seder with the whole Chacham story, right? We say, why is he a Chacham? Because he knows the difference between Eidus, Chukim, Mishpatim. We've spoken about this in the past at length. Eidus are testimonial, right? Mitzvahs that have a reason, but based on certain events that we wouldn't have necessarily come up on our own unless they were to testify for something unique. But they're not 100% logic, but they're not illogical either. There's a reason why. Chukim are illogical, super rational, so to speak, like shatnez or red heifer, paradum, and such. Mishpatim are mitzvah that are anchored in reason, right? So the Chacham knows the distinction of these different types of mitzvahs. So he's a bit of a lamdan, as we say. You know, he knows this different, right? But still, he's questioning. Now let me ask you better. If he's such a Chacham, why is he? Chacham doesn't just mean he has knowledge, intelligence. It also means he's wise in the sense of being spiritually refined. How is he even coming here to question something of why Hashem is giving us a mitzvah? And doesn't he know it's to serve God, right? Isn't that the whole point? So what is the Chacham's question to begin with? So the answer is like this. The Chacham is not asking, why are we doing mitzvah, or even how it's connected to Egypt and things like this. He's asking something deeper. He says, if we go back to our history with the forefathers, the patriarchs, matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they also did mitzvahs, right? So their mitzvot, there it says, right, that they channeled, Abraham, that all the did the whole Torah before it was given, and they expressed it in their ways. Abraham through Chesed, Yitzchak through Gebura, Yaakov through Rachamim, Teferet, and so on and so forth. So we see they were on this spiritual level, and in fact, their connection of doing mitzvah in the physical world was ancillary, meaning their focus was primarily on the spiritual. It just happened to be, in order to do a mitzvah, they had to manifest it in a physical object. But it wasn't about the physicality qua physical. It was just the physical being the conduit for the spiritual. But it wasn't about the physical per se. So this is what the Chacham is asking. Right? Why now when we do mitzvahs, it's different. The whole idea of mitzvah is, if you remember, we spoke about this in the past when we were speaking of the Parsha Tetzaveh. Mitzvah means lashon tzavsa v'chibur, to be connected. Tzav, right? Mitzvah, right? To be like this, to be channeled, to be one, to create this inextricable connection with Hashem, with the mitzvah. That's what a mitzvah means. So what the Chacham is asking is, if it's about Hashem, and Hashem is the highest of spiritual, and it's about being connected to Hashem, who is so spiritual, then why do we even have to do mitzvot in the physical world? And even when we do it in the physical world, because we're physically bound and we're in the physical bodies and so on, why so much of a focus and emphasis on the physicality of mitzvah? You open up Shulchan Aruch, it's all about the technical physicalities. Like, do it like this, not like this. This size. You eat the matzah, it has to be kazayas, like the olive size or egg size. And in 4 minutes, and this, and baking, and this, it's all very, very physically oriented. So why this obsession with the physical here? Why? To the contrary, to be connected to Hashem, we should transcend the physical. We should be on the status of like our patriarchs, the way they did mitzvahs. What is this whole obsession with of making it all gashmius and physical, right? So and in all three forms, like that, all these mitzvahs, regardless of what they are, edus chukim mishpatim, they're all primarily physically bound. This also explains another thing, and I think Jonathan, we spoke about this in this years past. I think you asked this also. Like if it's about lachem v'leilai, you, so the Chacham is seemingly saying the same thing that Hashem told, Agad told eschem, you, right? So seemingly the Chacham is saying you, like the Rasha says you. But the answer is that it's a different you. When the Rasha says you, he means just in general. You as a people. When the Chacham says you, he's saying the you of the ancestors of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Eschem from Amo, from before. Not to put himself out of the picture. He's saying, why? Because he says Hashem Elokeinu, also our God. So he's not taking himself out of the Chacham, not taking himself out of the inclusionary our God. But the Eschem, that Eschem is specifically referring to the pre-Egypt, pre-Exodus, pre-Mount Sinai way of the patriarchs. That what are these mitzvahs why are we not like our patriarchs and matriarchs? Seemingly, mitzvahs should be primarily spiritual, not physical. Right?
So I hear what you're saying, and I still maintain that the Russia here is getting a bad rap because what he's doing is he's quoting directly from the text. He's if you look in Yud Bet
in Shmos,
in Shemot, right? V'haya ki yomru alechem b'nechem. It's in the plural.
right?
Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem.
Right.
It's exactly the same words. And it says, V'amartem zevach pesach hu Lashem asher pasach al
Right.
batei v'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim b'nog poet Mitzrayim v'et batenu hitzil v'yekod ha'am v'yishlachavu. And you give him a completely different explanation.
Well, again, we're pre-assuming that is the Russia to begin with. It's not that we don't know who it is there, and then later we say it's the Russia. We're saying this is the Russia talking in the text. It's not this first the text and then we interpret it as being the Russia. We're saying these are the very words that the Torah is giving us coming out of the Russia's mouth.
Then why don't we say at that point, or why doesn't the Torah say, Sha'asat li b'tzeitim Mitzrayim? But instead it says, V'amartem zevach pesach hu Lashem.
I see.
And later on, it says in the following chapter, the question that we attribute to the Tam, V'haya ki ish alcha vilcha machar lemor mazot.
Right.
Amarta elav bechozek yad hotzianu Hashem mimitzrayim mibeit avadim.
Right.
And so, you don't, I mean, it seems like somehow the Haggadah conflated all of this stuff.
Conflated. I do agree that the answer that we give in the Haggadah, li v'lailai, is different than the way the Chumash says about Martab Zevach Pesach. I agree with you. Although you could say that Martab Zevach Hashem Asher Pesach is a description of how it happened to me and not to you. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, I mean, we could. There's more to discuss about this.
There's certainly no makeh et shinav or anything like that.
Right. Agreed. And that's why even the way I just interpreted it with the Russia is giving it more of a positive spin, and it's not exclusionary. It's just telling him, "Eina chanami," as we say in Hebrew. You're right. Pre-Egypt, you have a point that this way would you have a good question. Why are you doing this? But now know that we're not excluding you. I mean, I personally like seeing Hakash Shinav in a more Hasidic way, right? It's just like weakening the bite, so to speak, not punching him in the mouth. You know what I mean? Good, but yeah, I agree.
Some Haggadah is translated as "you shall blunt his teeth," which is sort of the same thing.
All right. Okay. Yes, I would say another thing as you were saying it just a little popped out me. That with the Russia verse it says lochem, and with the chacham it says eschem, right? Which lochem is more now both confrontational and it's also la to you. It's like making more of this us versus them thing, lochem. Eschem, even though it's talking about the other, but it's not in this oppositional, confrontational way as much. That's just, I'm just. This is just my feeling about it, the difference of the two.
Yeah, it
But
could be, except that again, he's quoting exactly from the Tanakh. Maha avodah hazot lachem.
again,
Yeah,
quoting from the Tanakh or not doesn't make it better or worse. It's just the facts. In other words, um, in other words, just because it says you're saying because it says in the Torah, therefore there's nothing wrong about making the statement that therefore, which we later say the Rasha is saying something wrong. You could say again, like I said before, maybe it's set up to begin with that it is a wrong statement already, the way it's read in the way it's in the Chumash, right? A lot of Torah commentary is like that. Torah commentary is seen not as much as an additional interpretation that comes post text, but it's a way to read the text within its very gufa text, as we say, the body,
Yacholiyot. But at
right?
the same time, the answer is on a much
Okay.
different level.
The answer, I agree.
We're going
There's
around,
less
yeah.
of it. Yeah, I understand. In general, and in general, we could go also in the answer to Russia. There's a beautiful teaching of the Maggid about it. Maybe if we have time, we'll maybe go into that verse specifically. But back to the Chacham, just to wrap it up. In this way, the Chacham and Russia do have something in common because they're both questioning what is this new way of Yiddishkeit of doing mitzvot with emphasis on the physical. You hear?
Right.
So the Chacham is saying this too. That why let us be like holy Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and just do things mainly spiritual. To which the answer is that's it's true. We could theoretically, but that's not the purpose of being in the world. The purpose of being in the world is to work on things and to transform them. To take things like edus, testimonial, which testimonial is things that are not obvious. You need a sign, meaning that you have to indicate something that's concealed, right? To show things like in the world that are concealed spiritually, then you need an edus to reveal it. Same thing, chukim, something you have to chisel and hook, like right, to work on. Even mishpatim, things that are all rationally oriented and with the mind covering up in the spirituality. So we have to work on the mitzvah even in areas of obstacle and concealment and transform it into holiness. And that is why it's essential to mention the Avadim Hayinu to the answer. Because Avadim Hayinu means where's the first time where we as a people had to really work on transformation? It was in Egypt. Avadim, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. That means we have to go from the lowest depths of impurity and work on ourselves and take that power and then work on ourselves even after Egypt through the sphere accounting all the way to Mount Sinai and do what's known as the working the leather, as the term is in the Zohar and other places. To work it through, like it's not easy. And do that transformation. That you're right, the physical world is an obstacle, could be an obstacle, and could get in the way. But the whole point is to be involved in the physical world and work it through and through till it illuminates and shines, and then you reveal the holiness in let's say, as we know, the sparks, right? There's the 288 sparks, of which 202 were transformed coming out of Egypt. And this whole idea of working the world through and revealing that even in the physical world, and even the lowest parts, there's the highest level of holiness, that's why it's also not just working. It's lefare b'mitzrayim, to Pharaoh. Pharaoh, on the one hand, is the lowest, as we know. It's the personification of the most impurity. But on the other hand, as we've learned in the past, over the past couple of years in different contexts, Pharaoh, Pare, also represents the certain highest levels that from the world of chaos, from where the highest levels of revelation of light come. Ispiriu Konahirin, and Arif is the back. It says it's the back of Arichanpin, the highest levels above. Only through the many diminutions and coming down into this world, it's totally concealed. But its source, its root, is from the highest level. So our task in the world by doing mitzvahs is to work with the physical world and to transform it and show that within it are the highest, holiest sparks and divinity. And that's why Dafka, so much of the mitzvahs in general, and specifically Pesach, have to do with physicality and even with food, right? As much as we said before, to talk about the Pesach Haggadah is very, right? And we say that even that, like Rabbi Gamliel says, whoever doesn't say these three things on Pesach does not fulfill, which is Pesach Matzah Mar, right? But the fact is, if you just say it and you don't eat the matzah or the maror, you didn't do the mitzvah. All the more so if you just think about it, right? So we have to manifest it in the physical, and that is the innovation, and that's what that is right. That is the new next level of leaving Egypt and serving Hashem, going to Mount Sinai, is merging the highest levels of spirituality with the lowest levels of physicality, and to show that even through the physical, we could serve Hashem, and in a way that's the main way to serve Hashem. And when we do so, then automatically we reach a level to the years to that we reach down to the promised land, Eretz, and then we're in the years of Hashem to have be in awe or fear of Hashem and serve Him all the way, and as in the ideal setup. So in a way now we see that both in the question and answer of the Russian and the question and answer of the Chacham, they're different. They're, as they say, different, but same. Okay, and also that the lesson from this is not just a Pesach story or lesson, but it's for all of Torah mitzvahs, for all mitzvahs, ways to serve Hashem in its highest levels.
Nice.
Yes.
By the way, you're talking about Pesach being Pesach.
Right.
When we were in opposition to Paro, who was at the lowest of the lowest, that's Pet Ra.
Ra, right. I think we mentioned it. I think we brought this back in a certain lecture, but thank you very much for reminding. I love that. Thank you very, very much. Right. So it's transforming the Pera. Oh, that's a beautiful word, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Pera into Pesach. Right. And it's I think Sach is Sach is I think also the 68, which is the same gematria as Chaim, life, by the way. To say that the pet that's the counterbalance to the Pera, which is the opposite of life, the death power energy, with the Pesach, which is of the Per Chaim almost. Wow, nice. Beautiful. Yeah. So as usual, we could speak so much more, right? We could speak certainly until dawn, until the students come in and say it's the time to say Shachris already. And on and on. And there's mamish so much more to say. But what I will do now is like this: two things. One is, and since we spoke so much about Echad, so I'll share a niggin or two that came to me to this. All right. Then maybe we'll look at just the Vart of the Magid of the answer to the Rasha of Amartim Zevach Pesach, because we usually try to look up something from Magid Yaakov from the Magid, even though we're not doing the Hasidic Misnagdim series, and then end off with the story with the Baal Shem Tov as promised. Okay, and I think that feels like that we will we'll cover it sufficient. So first niggin, what's the word? Interlude. So the way it goes is, before we say Keneged arba abanim dibra Torah, we say Baruch Hamakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenasan Torah Lama Yisrael, right? Baruch Hu, right? So we say blessed the Hashem, this sacred space, blessed He, blessed the one who gave the Torah to Israel, to his nation Israel, blessed He, and then it goes connect. So there's 4 Baruchs. So here again, it's mentioned that these 4 Baruchs correspond to the 4 sons, and also to the 4 Echads that we mentioned before. So here's one nigun, then another that follows it right away. So the Baruch HaMakom is actually one of my first nigunim, and actually I shared it with Reb Zalman when it came to me, and he loved it, and he encouraged me to make more nigunim, which I did, and so on. So here's how it goes. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch shenasan Torah le'amai Yisrael 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 Baruch Hu. Blessed is the sacred space, blessed is He. Oh, blessed is the sacredness, blessed is she. Blessed is the sacred space, blessed is He. Blessed is the sacredness, blessed is He. Blessed you gave the Torah to Israel, blessed is He. Blessed you gave the Torah to Israel, blessed is He. Blessed you gave the light to all humanity, blessed is He. Blessed you gave the light to all humanity, blessed is He. So that's that. And then the next niggin that follows right away, the next words is, it's more like a, not Keneged arba bavanim dibra Torah, Keneged Abba Bavanim Debrata Vava Rava Kenegen Abba Bavanim Debrata Vava Kenegen Abba Bavanim Dibrata Vayra Echad Chavav Yechad Ravavavavasham Echad Tavam Yechad Sheyeinoi Moidei Avishon Echad Chavav Yechad Ravavavavasham Echad Tavam the echad she'eino yodei alishayu echad chacham the echad ravavavavasha echad tavam the echad she'eino Yodei alishayu. Okay, so there it is. It's more the second song is more like just Reinfear. It's like sometimes something you want in Haggadah, you don't even need a whole niggun. You need something like a nusach niggun, you know. So I mean, I have a lot more niggunim for the Haggadah, but I'll share over the year. We're getting late. If anyone wants to hear more nigunim for the Haggadah from me, let me know. Maybe I'll send you. Yeah, all that. But the reason we're saying these two is to bring out this point because we were talking about the echad that's in the chacham and Rosh Hashanah, and also the four sons. Dibra Torah, that it's connected to Dibra Torah, right? That's just like even one letter of the Torah is missing. You miss the whole people, the whole Torah. So too, even the Russia, even the letter, like we said before, Parshas Torah Amma Yisrael, the ayin ration fin of Amma Yisrael. So that's in the Baruch Hamukah, and the four Baruchs to the four sons, the four Echads, also corresponds to the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Tzir, Asiya, and the four cups, and many other things. The four terms of Geula, right? And the fifth Vehevesi, and there's much talk about it. That Arizal talks about it a lot, and Chassidus all over. So just know it's there, right? Like they say, 3 is comedy, 4 is redemption. Okay, redemption comes in 4s. So, all right.